This is Daybreak. Thanks for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. John Kuria is the partner at Kore Africa LLP. Odhiambo Ramogi is the CEO, Elim Capital, and Dr. Makali Mulu is the lawmaker representing Kitui Central, as well as a member of the Budget Committee of the National Assembly and an economist as well. Thanks, gentlemen, for staying with us. Yes, John, you had a point earlier. Before we went on the break, please, proceed.
Yes. So, and I just wanted to add to the point that when you have higher taxation, again, that could also lead to some of the statistics that we are seeing, depressed consumption. And it is also a fact that a lot of industries are also shutting down or depressing their, contracting in terms of production. I've personally witnessed one or two, factories shutting down their operations in Kenya, moving operations somewhere else, just because of the cost of doing business. Tax is also not adding, not having a steady tax policy is also not, improving things or making things better. So we keep talking about a national tax policy that would at least inform the way tax is going to be administered for 5 years or 3 to 5 years, so that there is some certainty. But what we are seeing in terms of, the reported statistics is not a surprise. You find that when there is depressed, economic activity, there is also going to be depressed cement consumption. Some of the key critical, activities will be depressed. So, and I like what the Honorable MP has said, that at the end of the day, what happens is that when you increase taxation, and significantly so, like what we have seen in the last few, based on the amendment bill that came through in December and last year, you find that you reduce the amount of money that is in people's pockets, hence depressing consumption.
Yeah, and talking about electricity, Honorable Makali Mulu, coming to you, there was a significant drop, as we had seen, in the production of electricity. Does this support then the broader economic consensus that there was, if you were to look between the numbers, a depressed or a decreased economic activity generally in the country?
Exactly, that's what it means exactly, that either as a result of what my two colleagues have said, one of them is as a result of some companies getting out of Kenya to other countries, it means then the consumption will have to go. The other thing is, in a situation where you are forced by circumstances to reduce your production, automatically it means energy consumption also in that factory or industry is going down. So it's the whole issue of demand. And as we said earlier, it's tied to the economic situation we are in. Because in a situation where you're producing goods and they're not being bought, because Kenyans have no money to buy, as it was the capacity to buy. You might be having goods all over, the capacity to buy. Are you going to produce more when you have already stock in your stores? The obvious question is no. So what will happen is you start reducing your production in terms of volumes. And once you do that, automatically, you are likely to reduce the workforce you are using to produce, because you are reduced. So it has a series of impacts to the economy. And that's why you see it will affect energy consumption. It will affect things like employment levels. It will affect things like what you are saying, reduction in exports, because these are all tied together. And there are also issues of imports. You also saw there was a decline in imports. Yeah. Because if you are not producing, and I said our economy is so much dependent on imported inputs. Yeah. If you are not producing, then automatically you will not need to import more. So this it's like a web, which is so much interlinked to a level that anytime you mess with one string of it, then the rest is affected. And that's what we need. That's why we're saying, even as we talk as a country, those of us who are in politics, some of the statements we make, they might look very good politically, but they send the wrong signals for the economy. Those people who want to invest in Kenya, those Kenyans who themselves want to even put their money into money market, put their money in the stocks, because it has serious implication in terms of stabilizing the prices. And anybody who is an investor, you want to maximize your profits. So in a situation where I will be minimizing my profits, I would rather not go there. I will keep my money in my pocket or put it in the bank to wait. Wait and see attitude, which is very wrong for an economy.
Okay, and Odhiambo then, because that means if manufacturing declines, there are either job losses or companies that will be laying off staff. It then means that there's no income, and that therefore affects the purchasing power of Kenyans for basic commodities like tomatoes, sugar, basic things, food for Kenyans. How then can, as the president pointed out, this year be made by his economic team and his administration to be an economy about productivity-led, export-oriented, to reboot the much-needed growth for the commoner to enjoy the economy?
Thank you. That's a very good question, because when you was talking about capacity to buy, capacity to purchase, what came to mind actually, especially when we are talking about the private sector investment, was the capacity to produce. Because high cost of living is also high cost of doing business. So that then if there is high cost of energy, there is high taxation, and of course there are governance issues as well. It means then any person playing in the private sector has very high costs, and then it affects their capacity to produce. I'm a supply-side economist. I believe that, there's the demand-side economists who believe that the only game in town is the interest rate. So if you want to manage the inflation, you only have the option of tinkering with the interest rate. You take it high so that you bring the inflation down, and when it goes down, you bring it down. The supply-side economist believes that the real medicine to inflation is production. So that in the longer run, it really doesn't matter how well you play with the interest rate. In the longer run, it's a question of, are we producing? And the inflation we are having today is because of also production gaps. When this administration came to power, they told us that we will embark on a serious agricultural production that would ensure we are able to generate exports, that will ensure that the shilling is stable against the dollar, that will ensure that as many people as possible are employed because of the value chains. We've not seen investment there. What we've seen is the maneno ya fertilizer. And you know, fertilizer is only one element. There is the whole question of inputs. We would want to see seeds. There's the whole question of logistics. How do we move these things into the market? How do we store these things? There's the whole question of market dynamics. Do we have a local market, but also do we have an international market? There's the whole question of market information.
I'll come to the market of the Yambo, because you're raising a very fundamental point. And the report does not mention the fertilizer subsidy, which was the flagship program by the government. Then does it mean the statisticians at the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics do not view the subsidy program as a major driver of growth?
It is evident because, well, have we enhanced our production since we came up with the fertilizer subsidy? And the answer is there is no evidence to point to an enhanced production of food in the Republic of Kenya, courtesy of that fertilizer subsidy. There is no evidence to point out that we have enhanced our agricultural production since the Kenya Kwanza government came to power. And for as long as we are not able to produce, we will be here for a very long time complaining about high cost of living, high food prices, and it's something we can do. We are a tropical nation. If we decided we wanted to produce food enough to feed the Republic of Kenya, we could, and we would do so within a span of 6 months. We have not just had that commitment from our leadership. Okay,
and is it the perfect example to point out of the corruption that had dogged the Galana Kulalu project?
Yes, there was Galana Kulalu project that was dogged by corruption. But beyond the Galana Kulalu project, because if you ask me, from an analyst point of view, it was designed to be kukulwa, to be eaten. Essentially, if you're going to make investments in the agricultural sector, please work with those who are farming Don't go as government and attempt to farm 1 million acres of farmland and try to produce food. That is someone who does not want these resources to reach out to the people in the private sector who actually do the work, and they want these resources controlled at a central point so that these resources can be diverted to them.
Yeah, okay.
But the ultimate solution is to work with those people who actually do farming. And I think if we can do that across the country and not just identify one area, work with people, train people to engage in agriculture, encourage them, give them a market, a place where they can store their product, they will do it because people need opportunities.
Okay, and John, coming to you, if you also focus on the non-food items, because this informs many other aspects, and here I want to come to fuel. For example, in the last 1 year, that is the period between December 2023-24, the report points out that petrol 1 litre dropped by 16.9%, diesel 1 litre 18%, and kerosene or paraffin 1 litre dropped by 25.3%. This drop is inclusive of the 8% increment in the fuel levy as of course, contained in the Finance Act of 2023. Had it not been for that increment in the 8%, we'll be talking about lesser cost of petroleum products, is it, which in turn will affect cost of transportation and improve the lives of Kenyans.
Yeah.
Is this also tied to the taxation element that we have talked about here, of how this is gradually also having an impact on the lives of Kenyans?
Yes, yes, and I would say there are various factors. You see, even the dollar rate as well could also have impacted on the cost of fuel. You've just indicated it had gone down. Now it has started going up a little. I've seen in the newspaper yesterday that the price of fuel is going to go up. So if you look at the whole, what informs the price of fuel, you've seen that they want to renew the deal that was there with the UAE.
The Gulf countries.
Yeah, the Gulf, yes. So all these are factors that affect, despite the fact that VAT on fuel was increased, I think there are also other factors that tinker with the cost of fuel. And I think the major one being the exchange rate. That is what has probably contributed to that price being stable. But if you look at it on the other side, the fact that the VAT was increased or the taxes were increased on fuel, has it contributed to more tax or more income for the government? And you will find that the facts are different. That in fact, what has happened is that fuel consumption has been going down because of the factors that we are talking about: depressed capacity, depressed consumption. Interestingly, over the December period, when you would expect a lot of movement, people moving around, you found that there was also depressed movement of people. So again, at the end of the day, you would find that what is happening is that tax collection, even from fuel, has actually gone down despite the increase. Yes.
And are these the indicators? Because if you compare the two periods of the 16.9% for petrol, diesel 18%, kerosene 25%, that was for the 1 year 2023-24 December period. If you look at the November statistics, the same, diesel dropped by 1.8%, kerosene 2%, petrol 2.4%. It seems also there appears to be a decrease if you compare the two periods there. What does this tell us about the numbers here and the differences?
So, and I think it's the same analogy, because if you find that when you're just controlling one aspect without looking at other aspects, so overall you're just playing with the exchange, the currency factor, and also looking at where the supply of oil is coming from, but not looking at the ultimate consumption. I think all this is affecting the numbers like we are seeing them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And Dr. Makali Mulu, coming to you. When he left office, the former CS, Professor Njuguna Ndongo, had one message for his successor, CPA John Mbadi, who is the current CS. He told him that one of the ways the country could increase taxes as a percentage of gross domestic product is to run away, he said, from this notion that high tax rates will raise high tax revenues. The reality is the opposite, Dr. Njuguna added. I don't want to mention who drives us there, but he said that I have been driving the fact that high taxes, even in cabinet, will not produce high tax revenues. That's why I embarked on tax policy review supported by the Danish government. Such advices are not heeded. Why?
Basically because of what we have. You know, this matter of taxation, I'm sure Ayub has been discussed on this table so many times that if people were keen and listening, some things will not happen. What Juguna was saying is basic economic theory. In the theory of taxation, there's what we call the rough scarf theory, which means there's a limit to the extent in which you can increase tax rate, so that when it goes beyond that rate, the total collection in terms of total revenue starts decreasing. That's what he was saying. And you know, we seem to have that appetite for every time we want to increase tax rates. And is the other discussion we were engaged in, where we were saying, the more you increase the taxes, the more you reduce the disposable income for Kenyans, taxes and levies. And in a situation where people have no money to spend, or they have very little to spend, then you actually suppress every economic activity which is supposed to be happening. What will happen is now, instead of you collecting more, and I've given this example many times, in a situation where the company has been forced by circumstances to sack employees or to lay them off, and you are expecting to collect income tax from those employees, what happens? Already there's a gap in terms of, and that's what Professor Ndung'u was saying. Professor Ndung'u, being a professor of economics, knows very well what he was saying. He was just telling the government, if you are able to listen to us, those who are professionals in this area, and do things as we are advising you, we'll be able to get out of this hole. Unfortunately, when you are an advisor to somebody, when you give your advice to that person, it's the decision of that person whether to take the advice or not to take. In a situation where your advice is not taken, you only remain frustrated, but there's nothing you can do. At the end of the day, you are not the final decision maker. And that's what we are seeing most of the senior civil servants going through. And you will be surprised. If you went to Treasury today, if you go to Treasury, just walk into Treasury and ask for the qualifications of people who are in Treasury, the technical people in Treasury, the accumulation of degrees of economics in that building. If you are to just say, let's count the number of degrees economics in this, the accumulation of degrees of people who have CPA-K, serious accountants, in that building, you will not expect that things will be working the way they are working. But the thing is, the technical people are doing their work. They are advising according to what they have been trained to advise, but they have been listened less. In this country, we have allowed politics to be the only thing which dominates. If it was Safaricom, we would be saying politics is Safaricom in this country. It has dominated everybody else, so everybody is just an observer. You know, when you dominate a situation, everybody becomes an observer, because they become so minute, so small, that their input is immaterial.
Yeah. And then how then do we, maximize and take advantage of this technical advice often given by not only the former CS, but also your friend, Dr. Patrick Masinde, and the control of budget, for example? She pointed out that there's an urgent need for tax reforms in this country. Increased taxation may lead to potential adverse economic effects. There is an optimal tax rate that maximizes government revenue. Increasing tax rates beyond this point, she said in 2023, may reduce tax revenue because higher taxes can discourage economic activity and worsen the cash position of the country. She literally highlighted or pointed out a very harsh economic environment, even for investors, pointing out further that even if the head of state goes out and gets investors into the country, they will come and explore and go back because of the economic situation, which is not good for our investments. I mean, how can this be digested by people in policy positions and heed such very critical piece of evidence?
Actually, what Masinde is saying is what Professor Ndung'u was saying. You see, Professor Ndung'u was advising the executive. Dr. Masinde advises Parliament, us now, who are in the Budget Committee and other committees of Parliament which relate to issues of budgeting. Now, what happens is, The same story I was telling you. If you look at most of the budget, Committee on Budget Appropriations reports, they are like what you have read. But when it comes to the plenary, for adoption of those reports, you find minimal attention is given to it. The same story. Those who have been advised, the MPs, where I belong, we are being told, if you don't control taxation, which has been proposed by the executive, you'll be harming the economy. But then we come and pass a finance bill, which has already been warned by Masinda that if you pass this thing, you'll be harming this economy. But what happens? Because of our other interests, which are external now, because the experts have told you, as to whether you take the advice or not, it's your business. Most of the time, the advice is not being taken. So we are saying we are in a situation where it will be very important as a country we balance technical advice with our political interests. If we do that, we'll actually help this country. If we don't, we'll continue remaining the dogs because we ignore that advice, and we have said it's just like a medical doctor. When he tells you if you don't take this drug, you're going to die, and then you say, we now have body immunity, I will not take. You end up dying. When you are dead, we bury you. There's nothing else we do with you.
Okay. Odhiambo, also the report points out decline in the production of, for example, tea by 12.2%. The two products, sugarcane and milk, also played a key role in driving growth within the manufacturing sector. How does this tie up, given the commodities' effect on the economy and the consumption in countries like Pakistan and most parts of the Gulf countries in the Arab world?
Would you allow me to comment on the tax question?
Yes, please,
briefly,
and then proceed.
Before I can come to the commodities question. I'm looking at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is we are in a bad position economically because of overtaxation. And we are overtaxing Kenyans because of high debt. And we are having a lot of debt purely because of corruption. And I think we need to appreciate that a good percentage of the monies that were borrowed never even got to the consolidated fund. Because Eurobond 1, there were complaints that there was no clarity as to whether it got to the consolidated fund account or not. As for the SGR, same story. We paid to get money, and then there was an account with the Exim Bank of China, and money went there. And so Kenyans are paying trillions of shillings for monies that in fact never got to them, was never circulated in our economy, created zero multiplier effect, impacted our economy in no possible way because it went into people's private pockets. And so I think we need to have that honest conversation as to why then are we financing corruption so expensively with our taxes, and why we are supporting corruption so aggressively to the extent that we are willing to sacrifice our economy. And if I can comment, Mheshimiwa, you know, Parliament is supposed to be the gatekeepers.
Exactly.
And to help us to ensure that, one, we do not borrow money that does not come to us. Two, we do not have budget allocations that support corruption. But you see, as you have rightly pointed out, when it comes to matters of fiscal issues, Parliament either becomes lazy or they become absent. So I don't know where the problem is, but I think it needs to be addressed from that angle. Coming back to the commodities question.
And what commodities, you will respond. You pointed out Parliament, and generally, why do you think there is a gross failure by parliamentarians to focus attentively so on the four key phases of the budget-making process: formulation, adoption, execution, and control, when the Constitution invests immense power in them?
Two things. One, of course, the political question, which is they are all subjects to their political parties, and they have to be loyal. So political parties is 2 or 3 people in Kenya who decide this is the way, and everybody in Parliament follows. But the other thing also that I have observed is they have not operationalized Constitution of Kenya 2010 to its full effect. The standing orders still say that Parliament has only small room to edit the budgetary allocations presented to them, which that is not what the law expected, the law expected that Parliament has origination powers to the extent that they can come up and say, no, we need to put money here, and not necessarily consult Treasury on it. But right now, their standing orders, which are subject to the law of the land, are telling them that your hands are tied. You can only edit the budgetary allocations presented to you to a certain percentage. I think that is a big problem that we need to handle.
Okay. And then do you think they do understand the mood music in the country and what Kenyans are going through? If we are to go by the statistics that we had of the increment in the prices of food and non-food items, which matters to them, have the representatives of the people failed the people?
Here is that there was no IEBC. Everybody knows it. Because Kenyans wanted to go to IEBC and recall their members of parliament as at September. Because by September, the 2-year window was already finished. And many Kenyans wanted to go to IEBC and just tell IEBC, recall so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. And then we would have a mini election by now. What saved Parliament and the members was the issue that there is no IEBC. If IEBC was there, we would be having very many elections right now. The short answer to your question is yes. The longer answer to it, however, is that the system has failed Kenyans. And it's not just Parliament, it is also the executive. Because the executive is supposed to provide adequate leadership to Parliament, that this is the manifesto we have, and we are requesting you to support that manifesto. And the executive somehow, somewhere, lost the direction as regards their manifesto. And so everybody is all over, everybody is looking for their own interests, including Parliament. So they have to wait. If they are to pass a bill, they have to wait and see, is there, kwa sababu kila mtu anakula, hata mimi kama mjumbe, I have to perhaps be taken care of financially before I can vote for a bill. And that has become now the order of the day, because there is no clear leadership of this is where we are going.
Which is unfortunate. Proceed to the other point.
To the commodities.
Yeah.
There is a decline in production of commodities. What this would mean in the longer run is the forex issues that we have had in the past will come back. And so if I've observed the exchange rate is going up to 130. By the time we have the Trump swearing in and the dollar strengthens further, of course it will progress even to a higher exchange rate. 135, 136, it would probably get to 138 in a few. And because of the decline in commodities, we then foresee that indeed the exchange rate would go high. And when the exchange rate goes high, that means more expensive exports. That means we are back to inflationary pressures, and that means interest rate remains high. And so where we are is an ugly conundrum that I do not see ourselves pulling ourselves out of in this year.
Yeah, and John, then, I mean, of course, in 5 days' time, we'll be expecting America policy first for the next 4 years, and the second Trump presidency is coming to the White House again. How will external factors, as mentioned by Dr. Makali Mulu, affect our performance against major currencies like the dollar, given that what had purposely driven the increase in the exchange rate was because of the interest rate which went up in the United States of America? I mean, and you have seen, of course, the Trump policy is hawkish to some extent, but his America First policy, of course, is what we all expect, and it's inevitable. How then is this likely going to be a contributory factor in the shilling, which may rise, given his past pronouncements?
All right. And allow me to also chip in into the discussion, because I think there are a lot of aspects, especially in how we apply tax, the tax morale. You're taxing me, I am paying the tax, but how that money is being applied then does not motivate me. And you see, we just focus, and you've seen the Kenya Kwanza government has focused more on employed individuals. When you look at, SHIF or SHA, as you would call it, housing levy, all these focused on employed individuals. You forget that there are very many SMEs, very many businesses out there who are not motivated to contribute to tax, because that tax is not being applied in the right ways. Primarily, like Odhiambo has said, due to the fact that corruption continues being one of the big factors that is pulling us down. But to answer your question, and you'll allow me to come back to that, is You see, when you have got an American president who does not favor Africa, who does not favor our, you know, the kind of trade agreements that have been entered, is not really looking at, you know, say for example in our case Kenya is, you know, as destination where they can import things from or can enter into trade agreements with. They are looking at America first. What that is going to do is that it is going to immediately depress production in Kenya. It's going to, people will not be able to, you know, like we depend a lot on, you know, foreign direct investment. We depend a lot on people sending money to people who are living and working in America or outside Kenya, sending money into Kenya, which contributes greatly to to our economy. So what you will find is that the dollar, you know, naturally what is going to happen is that there will be less export into those countries, which means that, again, also their policies will also, the policies that the Trump government is going to come up with will not favor our country. So if we don't look internally, if we do not align ourselves, if we don't keep, you know, ensuring that our tax policies, our governance is, again, also looking at the key tenant, which is production, we will end up in a situation where we'll be dependent on what is happening to you know, the dollar, and that will increase interest rates. It will. So at the end of the day, you will find that all aspects of the economy are going to be affected when the president of America decides just to think about the American economy. So what I would say is that it is going to be, it's going to have, you know, it's going to have a big effect on our economy. So you find interest rates going up. You find, again, also when interest rates go up, you find exchange rates as well will be affected, and cost of living is going to increase. And we are still not answering the question, what are we doing with the revenue, tax revenue that we are collecting? Are we improving industry? We were previously talking about aspects, agriculture. When you don't look at the entire value chain, you bring fertilizer, you give me fertilizer, but you've not created a market for my products. You are not incentivizing industries to set up such that they can be able to process the products that are, like all this time, why isn't Nyandarua one of the biggest, you know, producers of either, you know, the potatoes that are coming from there and so on? We should be ensuring that the end product, be it the crisps that we see on the shelves and so on, coming from that. So industries should be set up there. So you find the whole of that aspect is until it is addressed, not just through taxation, but also through policy, government intervening and realizing that we must make Kenya, you know, a country that that is leaning towards production, leaning towards industrialization. We talked about 2030, it looked very, very far. We are almost there, 2030,
yes.
Vision 2030. I don't know whether we are going to come up, we are going to extend that to 2040, but it looks like we are not even going to be able to achieve what we had set out to achieve by 2030. Oh. And just one last point.
Yes.
I was reading in the newspaper today, in fact, I have an article here where Gen Zs are saying more power to the people in terms of budget making. Just to the point Odhiambo has just made, that I believe that that window that is given for public participation is very, very short. And I don't think it's allowing us to be able to, and our members of parliament also enough time to be able to absorb what is really affecting the people on the ground, and how that impacts on, you know, tax collection.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Makale, this period, of course, and the release of the report coincides with the dry period where we expected a boom in construction. But the report also points out significant declines in the production of galvanized iron sheets, cement, and the assembly of motor vehicles. Taking iron sheets and cement production, and how does this then in turn affect the housing project, one of the pet projects for the president and the Kenya Kwanza administration?
You know, basically, that's the manufacturing sector. And I remember when you projected the statistics, it was showing that things are not working well. Basically, if you look at the set targets when we are doing these housing projects, there should be now a number of the programs that they have shifted the completion date, which means they are already experiencing some challenges in terms of implementation. And it was basically the whole issue is what we were saying. You know, when the economy is not doing well, many of these sectors will have challenges. Yesterday I was just reflecting on some of the issues. For example, when I looked at yesterday's news, the issue of the lecturers saying they are going on strike. 2 days ago, I think there was the issue of the clinical officers saying they will go on strike. So you can see there is a rollover. Most of the problems we had in 2024, they are being rolled over to 2025, which means we're actually starting in 2025 from a very weak position in terms of sectorial issues, education, health, and some of these sectors are what we call the social sectors, which set up the base for most of these things. I think when you look like things like what we call the enablers to the economic growth enablers, things like what we have discussed, the issue of energy. You know, energy is a key input into it. Issues of governance, which he has mentioned more than 3 times. You know, what Kenyans don't realize is in a situation where we have accepted corruption to be part of our lives, what it means is when I'm doing my budgets and as a company, and I'm doing now pricing of my commodities, I will have a small element saying part of the pricing will include corruption. Yeah. So it will increase the price of the goods and services we consume in this country. So it makes things more expensive. Look at what is happening currently. The issue of pending bills. Something we have discussed over the years. We're saying, can we pay pending bills so that these business people who have worked with the government can use that money to reinvest and create more job opportunities? Every year we keep on saying, I saw an article the other day, we said we'll clear them this year. Now it has been put to another 3 years. Which means you're already putting people in a situation where they can't produce more. And one time I listened to my colleagues, you know, being a member of parliament, because I hear the comments coming from Kenyans that have been in that parliament now for 13 years, I really feel like we are as guilty as charged as members of parliament. But no, it's not lost. What is the problem I see in parliament, because I sit there, is that you have some voice of reason in parliament. But that voice is so minimal to a level that the voice of, because we go by majority voting, you know, when the speaker puts a question, it's a matter of saying yes and no. That the yes is so overwhelming that the no, even though it's there, becomes like it doesn't exist. And that's why you see, we all appear like, that's something we are as guilty as charged. But I want to tell you one thing. We can even extend this budget and make it possible by 2 months, like my fellow panelists is saying. But I also ask myself, Parliament has a lot of capacity, a lot of power given by the Constitution in budget making. The person who is technically to be advising in Parliament matters budget is a parliamentary budget office, which has serious officers.
Right.
But the people being advised, who to a large extent have no capacity to internalize the budget thing, are not listening to that advice. So you see that dilemma. And that's why I'm telling you, even if you gave us 2 months to look at the budget, more likely we'll end up with the same result. Because we are ignoring the advice coming from the technical people. We are voting on the basis of our party lines, on the basis of mobilization being done by the party whips. And very basic things you should be voting no, all of us. If we care about public interest, you find that we are voting yes. Because the yes voice, as I said, is the one which guides the speaker on how to rule the final verdict in parliamentary business. So I think we have issues of also the architects of governance, our governance structure, more so the parliamentary structure, needs to be reviewed. And I'm saying those scholars in political science, how I wish they could take time to look critically at how Kenya is being governed, and more so from the end of the parliament. Because unless we do a bit of tweaking to that governance structure, we might not be able to achieve most of these things we keep on talking when we come to these shows and when we talk in our platforms out there, even as professionals.
And Odhiambo, the lawmaker, talks about the ability given to Parliament to amend the national budget. And you earlier on talked about that. But how does this unfortunate behavior by MPs when it comes to such critical matters have an economic impact, given that what we projected as part of the report and we fleshed out It speaks to what Kenyans are putting on the table. It speaks to transport, speaks to education, speaks to healthcare, speaks to what they eat on a daily basis. How is this behavior by the majority of the lawmakers in the National Assembly, for instance, tend to have an impact on the commoners who are watching the unfortunate events with concerns?
Right. Most definitely it does affect. But perhaps let me start by saying I think our parliamentarians are too comfortable. We've insulated them from the economic situation in the country. Because for me now to buy a car, I have to actually get a loan, and these guys don't have to.
We get a loan.
They don't have to borrow. But at the same time, I think we've insulated them too much, to the extent that the impact of their decision, they hardly feel it. And I think we need to review that. I agree with Mheshimiwa that there's need to review the parliamentary structure, and especially with regards to party politics and party loyalties. Now, coming back to how does this affect Mwananchi, of course it does. The budget on one hand identifies how government is going to spend, where money is going to go, whether I'm going to have a road or not, whether I am going to have healthcare or not, whether my children are going to be educated or not, that there will be mgomo or not. Because if they actually allocate proper resources for that, there will be no mgomo. But if they do not, then there will be a mgomo, and then my kin and kith will die on the operating table because there is no one to take care of them. So what they do indeed affects. But that's only on the budget side. There's the finance or the fiscal side where they have to set the tax policy. They have to approve a tax policy. And for some reason, they always just say yes to some taxes that hurt Kenyans. And that's why I'm saying I don't think they actually feel the impact of it. Because high taxes mean I have less disposable income. I'm going to struggle to actually pay my bills. I'm going to struggle to take care of some of my relatives that are dependent on me. I'm going to struggle to make some purchases. And if I'm not making those purchases, it means that money is not circulating and growth is depressed. And so it does affect, at the end of the day, the decisions that Parliament makes affects everyone. And not just Mwananchi, it also affects even those in government. And so I think that they are too insulated. Even when you look at their NHIF, now I think it's Shisha, theirs is usually a lot higher. They are paying the same amount as you, which was around 200%. Yeah, but theirs was a lot. You get an MP that has to go out of the country with a budget of over 10 million shillings. Now I'm wondering, will this guy really be inspired to ensure that the healthcare in this country is well taken care of if we have given him a budget of 10 million to go to a country in Europe to get medical attention? There needs to be a review so that then he can actually face the healthcare system. And by the time he's facing it, he's inspired to do something about it.
But now the deductions are 2.75%, which is an increment, is it? So we have an MP here, he can tell us.
Yeah.
No. That roughly translates to about
30,000.
30,000.
Slightly over 30,000.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Per month.
Which is supposed to be properly, if given the differences in terms of the pay slips, and of course it's only a tiny group of Kenyans who earn more than 100,000 and above.
That's true.
Can set up our system. So it's 30,000 from?
Initially it was maximum was 1,700.
Yes.
1,700, yes, yeah.
That included everyone from the president.
Yeah.
It
was maximum was 1,700.
Actually,
so now it's more of a percentage.
Yeah.
But you know what we are saying? I think the point he's trying to drive home, which I totally agree with him, is we should have a situation where if I want to be treated, I have a disease, I want to be treated, I can be treated in Kenya like any other Kenyan.
Right.
Because what has happened is, because of this poor management of the health system, we had gone for private insurance. So you find parliamentarians, they have their own arranged private insurance where we are paying a lot of money to companies to insure medical cover for parliamentarians. But the rest of Kenyans are then left with the NHIF, which then means automatically you're not getting the same quality of treatment. But now what SHA has done, and that's why we are saying SHA is a very good idea, it's only that implementation we are not getting it right. Because SHA wants to ensure that if you have a critical disease, irrespective of where you work, irrespective of your social status, irrespective of your economic status, you're able to access medical care. That's what SHA is supposed to be doing. But you see now the way we are implementing it. The other day I was talking to one of the people who work there, and they were telling me they're in a way reintroducing what they are calling funds.
Yes.
So like the police will have a fund within SHA where they can have their enhanced medical cover. You see? Going back to where we have come from. Yeah. And that's what basically we are saying. Can we take time? There's some which you know, as scholars, and most of us here have been to school, when you're doing a paper, when you're writing your paper, there are some stages you must do. You must do what we call literature review, where you look at what already has been done.
Right.
Yes.
And then from there, you identify which gap you are addressing. Then you go out to the field, you collect the data, and then you analyze and make your recommendations.
Correct.
So there's a system. I don't know why we don't follow some of these basic systems. That can we look at what is ailing us?
Yes, yeah.
Out of that, pick where the problem is.
Yeah.
And now with the problem, can we come up with these specific strategies to address the problem? I think if we go that way, we'll be helping most of these things. I'm telling you, the money being collected through SHA currently is so much money that if we manage it well, with the time we might even reduce that percentage coming down. But you know what he has been talking about always? People are poking their hands into that money.
A lot of hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
As long as you can allow me to just
Let me hear from John.
I just wanted to weigh in on, and especially what, you know, the Mheshimiwa and Odhiambo have said, in terms of the question that you had asked. Do we really look at do the members of parliament actually internalize the effect of what they are doing, you know, in terms of the legislation that they come up with? If I take affordable, let me even leave SHA because SHA is actually a very big issue.
Yeah.
If I take affordable housing levy, when the draft bill was introduced, what happened is that, you know, and it came in the previous Jubilee government.
Yes.
It was introduced, but they decided not to implement it. And then came the Kenya Kwanza. It was introduced and implemented, but at some point, it was again taken back because there were some few aspects that were not, you know, that were not working out right. So, but what I wanted to say is that we started with a draft bill that was perfect. It had a cap. You'd find that you're contributing, but your money is capped. It had laws that were favorable. If you look at even the allocation of the houses and so you could see there was some thought, there was some literature review, if I was to put it the way Mheshimiwa said. There was some analysis that was done, comparison with other countries where the same has been implemented. But when it was taken back, you know, last year, and when it was taken back, and again, the members of parliament, because it was suspended at some point, and then members of parliament had to go, they redraft the legislation. It came back a worse animal. And in the sense that there was no cap, even a simple relief was not available. It has just been provided in December is when it was provided. The relief was finally approved or, you know, put in a way that it's certain for everybody. So just to add to what Odhiambo has said, we need to be able to be accountable.
Okay.
Members of parliament need to be accountable, need to be able to see the impact of the laws that they are making. Right. And just to the last point,
yes,
looking at SHA, the amount of money, 1,700 to 30,000, like Mheshimiwa has said, you can look at, that is 30 times, almost, I don't even want to talk about it because it's mind-boggling. What are they doing with that money?
Okay.
Yeah. So
the place of accountability. Shortly,
exactly,
sample in the feedback, and we'll see what you have sent us. Yes, Odhiambo, we heard a point.
Yes, I wanted to mention to Mheshimiwa that they do literature review.
What happens then?
They actually collect data and do analysis. But you see, the guy who does literature review is the equivalent of the parliamentary budget office. And the guy who makes the decision is the equivalent of Mheshimiwa. What I wanted to say is there is a significant conflict between the political vision and the political interest in this administration. Because when you look at the vision of where these people wanted to take us, man, it's awesome, it's sterling, it's impressive, and you're actually wowed by it. But then when you look at the implementation, you start seeing signature, you start seeing evidence of personal selfish interest in how it's implemented. Take, for example, the Hustler Fund. If the Hustler Fund was given to some few banks, 2 or 3 banks, and told, look, we have 50 billion here, and we are going to do credit guarantee. We give you 50 billion, give Kenyans up to 150 billion. That is 150 billion circulating in the economy, supporting micro and small enterprises. And it is targeting production, because banks will not give you money to just because you supported William Ruto. Banks will give you money, okay, give us evidence that you're going to do production. And you see, when money is chasing after production, that's good money. When money is just given carelessly, that inspires inflation. And so that would have made a difference. But then again, interest got into it because someone wanted to eat from Hustler Fund. And now the way it's implemented, it has zero impact on the economy, and there is a savings aspect. You can save, but you cannot access that money. The same thing I am seeing with the SHA, Mheshimiwa. So that now you're giving money, but how it's implemented is where the problem is. A lot of
secrecy.
Yeah, because I also agree that there are elements of SHA that I celebrate. For example, the amount of coverage that someone like Mheshimiwa will enjoy would be a lot higher than the amount of coverage his driver will enjoy. And so then it is only fair that Mheshimiwa pay more than his driver does.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that problem has been solved by SHA. But how it's implemented, still you see evidence of just personal selfish interest.
And is that the reason as to why we had a 13.6% decline in credit to construction?
Well, most
For example, as you have talked about, of the money.
Yes, but allow me also to point out that we've had an oversupply of high-end housing in the country for a while. I don't think that has been handled. The idea was, even if there's oversupply, there is a high population growth. And so somehow population growth will just catch up. The demand for the housing will just catch up with the supply. This has not happened because even though there's a population growth, the economy is not growing in tandem with that. So yes, there is need, but there is no demand. And the difference is the demand has capacity to buy. Need does not have capacity to buy. And so people are there who need housing, but they are unable to buy those housing. And so I would not be inspired, for example, to go and construct more housing units when the ones I already have are probably not moving. And so there's that, but there's that, the whole question of demand that also has not been addressed.
Okay, and the contraction by 2% in the housing sector, as pointed out by the report, this, of course, the affordable housing program, which it says created over 200,000 jobs, and that most of the materials used were locally sourced, but the report further pointed out that it contracted by 2% with huge declines, as earlier pointed out, in iron sheets, cement, and the assembly of motor vehicles. Shortly, we'll be having your feedback here on the broadcast. But Dr. Makali, as we finish up, given, of course, the broad reach of the economy that we discussed and what matters to the mwananchi, is this the year to certainly fix? We have a finance bill, of course, and a budget coming in later years, one that Kenyans are looking up to in taking part and making their views heard. Besides the conversations on the economy that Kenyans are having and calling for proper governance and accountability, is this the year to set our economy on the path of prosperity?
I think every year is a year to set our economy right. It only depends on what you do. If we maintain the status quo, the way we have done things in 2024, things will not change. But I do believe those of us who are in positions of authority, if we really want to change the way things are happening and do things differently, this is the year now to set the pace for economic growth in this country. And have people now benefiting more from our economic policies once we implement them. Because, you know, we are a country where we talk more and do very little. Very good ideas. SHA, new funding model for universities. On paper, excellent. Implementation, below 10%. So I think we need to match the proper documentation with implementation and had a component which is hardly considered. We need to bring serious component on monitoring and evaluation so that at any point we pick lessons learned to improve our implementation. We are doing very badly on the area of monitoring and evaluation, which is critical for any program management. And once you get that right, I can tell you for sure, the country is on the right track. The other thing I want to say, and I want to say to all of us, because all of us here, we are Kenyans,
Yeah.
we are responsible. Kenyans have always remained wise, but they have not been very vigilant. Now, we need to note that Kenyans are wiser now, and in addition to being wiser, they have become more vigilant.
Okay.
So anybody who is in a position of authority who is going to relax,
Yeah.
it's not going to have it easy.
Interesting times.
Yes,
John, your
interesting
final
times.
comments before
Yes.
we take the highlights of the feedback.
Yes, just to add to what Mheshimiwa said,
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, the most important, I think we have all these policies, all these things are laid out. If you look at the Public Finance Management Act, it clearly states what needs to be done, from a policy point, from a taxation point. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, are we actually accountable to the people? Are we accountable to the taxpayers? Are we accountable to ourselves? Are we seeing incremental improvement over time? We keep giving incentives to industries. We need to ask ourselves, what is the impact of those incentives that we are giving industries? And are we following through to make sure that those incentives are resulting in better improved prices for everyone? When we look at, like we've just been talking about SHA,
Yeah.
when is the state of health care improving over time? So that monitoring and evaluation is very, very critical. Okay. And therefore, even coming up with a stable budget policy, national policy, which informs taxation measures that would be implemented over the medium term to the long term, I think is very, very critical.
Thank you. Let's now sample the feedback. The hashtag on X, Citizen Daybreak, the SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Here is what you are saying. Bob Otiono says, looking from where we came from when President William Ruto took over power, he has done well economically, which has yielded positive results for the 2025 economic outlook, though heavy taxation makes Kenyans not feel the impact of the economy. Frank Orinde says the unpredictable tax regime continues to cast a shadow over investor confidence in doing businesses in Kenya. Frequent changes and lack of clear policy direction hinder the long-term planning for businesses, slowing down economic momentum. Engineer Lazaro says decline growth in key sectors and inflation rate is a clear indication that the economy isn't improving at all. We can't keep on living in denials. Something must be done immediately. Gode Barasawere says our current economic status as a country is in the backwaters. It can be likened to a businessman who has reared chicken for sale but ends up eating one every day until the stock is depleted. Remy says the failure to achieve fiscal consolidation targets exacerbates Kenya's debt vulnerabilities, especially due to the high debt service repayments. Frank says again, Kenya's economic potential is immense, but high taxation continues to weigh heavily on citizens and businesses. The taxation is directed to serve ballooning debts, a problem exacerbated by years of mismanagement and corruption. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. Dr. Makali, your time is appreciated. A member of the Budget Committee and the lawmaker representing Kitui Central Constituency, John Kiari, also joined us this morning. Thanks for your time. Odhiambo Ramogi, 30 seconds, your final comments. I hadn't given you that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to just highlight on the need for monitoring and evaluation. In this country, we do not have a budget review conference that brings together all parties. I think we need to have a culture of doing a budget review conference, and that will put the momentum for public participation as early as July, August. Immediately the financial year ends, then we start there. The second thing that I want to mention as I finish is I know Mheshimiwa's expectations for 2025 are very high, but I don't see any clear directions in that regard. The global economy is expected to grow, and I'm hoping that will spill over into the country. But locally, we've not seen any direction.
Much appreciated, gentlemen. Odhiambo Ramogi, Dr. Makali Mulu, John Kiari, thanks so much for your time. Thanks to you too for waking up with us here on the broadcast. The hashtag on X has been Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Up next is Health and Lifestyle with Safin Achieng Ouma, and Trevor will be here tomorrow morning by the grace of God. Till then, good morning.